Diamond cutting is probably the most involved and the most technical of the four C's of the diamond industry. Why is that? Because first of all, there's a great degree of subjectivity in grading. That there's a lot of argument as to what constitutes an ideal cut, and is one of the most argued academic points in the diamond industry. But besides that, it is also the most involved of all the different of the four C's. And the reason for that is because it takes a lot of different factors into account. The principle of of cutting a stone well has to do with wanting the stone to bring in light in a way that would maximize the exit of that light. So you want to basically have a stone bring in light typically through its table, through the top plateau of the stone, and allow that light to exit in an uninterrupted fashion through the stone's table as well. Diamond grading and diamond cutting is very much centered around how diamonds appear through their top view, and most specifically, how a diamond's table, how its top plateau is able to return light. The expertise in diamond cutting centers around maximizing that light return. And if you think of a diamond and the way that a diamond is shaped, sometimes you need to think of it as being an array of mirrors. And so a diamond has a bottom, a pavilion, which is shaped a certain way, and it has a table which is shaped and sized another way. Now, the point is that you'd want to be able to bring the light in and have that mirror array, that stone's pavilion, be situated at such an angle that allows for maximum light passage through the top. It is not a big deal to have light enter the stone and then enter through the exterior of the pavilion and not find its way through the top. Light is going to find its way out of the stone one way or the other. The key is that ideal cutting, or exquisite cutting on stone, is meant to gear that light towards exiting through the stone's top. There are different methods of cutting stone, and the most studied of all of the methods is the method of cutting the round brilliant, the 58 facet round brilliant. So when it comes to diamond cutting, when it comes to cutting a stone ideally, the only true measure that exists for quote unquote an ideal cut would be that of would pertain to the cutting of round brilliant diamonds. Why is that? Because the round brilliant is the most studied and the best refined shape of all the shapes that exist. The industry's had a lot of time to cut it. They've had a lot of time to haggle over what is the best way of cutting it, and it's reached more or less a consensus as to what constitutes an ideal cut on a round. There's still argument on the topic, and yet it's argument that deals with nuance, and it doesn't deal with very large scale differences. When it comes to other stones, like the princess cut, or the cushion, or the radiant, or the pear shape, or what have you, there's actually very little consensus as to what constitutes the best cut shape. But one thing is clear: the princess cut, the radiant, and the cushion are typically going to have better light return properties than shapes such as the pear shape, the marquise, the oval, and certainly the emerald cut, and really any of the other shapes. The reason is it's not a matter of preference so much, and when it comes to picking a shape, actually it is a matter of preference from the consumer standpoint. But it's not a matter of preference from a cutting standpoint, because it's not a big mystery that radiance, the modern cushion, and the princess cut are all categorized as being brilliant cuts, very much in the same way that a round is considered to be a round brilliant cut. Why are these four shapes called brilliant? Because they employ a very similar cutting technique, and that cutting technique is what enables a stone to appear as, I'll use the term again, brilliant, in relation to other shapes. The princess cut is the most distinctive of the brilliant cuts, because it's square and it has sharp edges. The round is a time tested shape, and most people are familiar with it. But as far as the fancy shapes, the shapes other than the round, the princess cut is probably the most popular, and it has the most distinctive shape in being completely square. The radiant is another one of those brilliant cuts, and it's different than the princess because it actually is cut cornered. So it doesn't have the sharp edges the princess cut has, and the cushion is similar to the radiant in that respect. What are the differences between cushions and radiant? When you look at them on a screen, they can sometimes look a lot alike. That's not a coincidence. The modern cushion is actually a derivative of the radiant. It's actually faceted to a higher degree than the radiant. It's kind of like taking a radiant a step further. They round out its corners a bit more, and they add more faceting onto the stone's crown, giving it a cushion shape. The antique, it's a throwback to the antique cushion shape. And cushions, as a result, because they have more tinkering with their crown, they typically can have smaller table percentages. They will have a smaller plateau. And so which one is the best stone? Well, that's a matter of preference. But when it comes to the brilliant cuts, the cushion, the radiant, and the round are somewhat similar in their drive to push the light and return the light through the center of the stone. All three shapes do a particularly good job with slight nuance of differences between them in returning the light through the center. The princess cut stands out as the kind of stone that doesn't do that awfully well, because the princess cut actually has a dark star, a dark X going through its center. That is how princess cuts are cut. That is, if you were to see a prototype princess cut, if there was such a thing, that's how it would be cut. And the princess cut is able to return light through the quadrant. If you kind of take the princess cut and you divide it into 4 quadrants, which essentially that dark star does, the quadrants, sort of the sandwich quarters, the slices, are going to be the parts where the stone is returning light very well. So in that respect, princess cuts and the other brilliants are very different. Shapes other than the brilliant cuts, such as the oval, the pear shape, the heart shape, and the marquee, they can be very well cut relative to the shape. The important thing to understand about those shapes is that the main point of assessment for those shapes, as far as getting a well-cut stone, is going to have to do with the minimization of what's called the bow tie effect. What is a bow tie effect? A bow tie effect is a point of light loss, namely, actually, it's going to be more like a line of light loss that will typically go across the center of the stone. It's called a bow tie because normally it can appear like a line, but other times it can appear like 2 inverse triangles facing one another in the shape of a bow tie. And stones which are ovals, which are well cut, marquees, which are well cut, pear shapes and heart shapes, which are well cut, will show a minimized to non-existent amount of bow tie. Non-existent is a bit of a stretch because it's very tough to cut an oval, marquee, heart shape, or pear shape that has no bow tie. And I think realistically, I think that the key is to look for a minimized or a tight form bow tie, a bow tie which is not going to spread, a light loss that is not going to spread across the stone, but rather contain itself to those very small inverse triangles. So that is how those stones would be assessed. There are 2 shapes which the assessment for cutting almost does not pertain to them. It does, but the point is that these shapes are not intended to be very brilliant, and those 2 are the emerald cut and the asher. Those are 2 shapes which are very open faceted. They're not intended to really return light. They almost draw the eye in as opposed to throw light out. So there, people who love them usually love ashers and emerald cuts for their purity and for the fact that when you buy an asher and emerald cut, you really have to buy an exquisite stone for it to look good, because the stone is not able to mask its color awfully well because it doesn't have the cutting with which to do it, and it doesn't have the faceting to mask inclusions awfully well. They typically have to be fairly clean and fairly white for you to pull off the look that you would intend using the emerald cut.